It was Christmas. Almost everyone in the kingdom seemed a little happier, and though the cold made them walk faster, they walked a little more lightly. It was a bright, busy, noisy time. In the middle of the kingdom stood a huge mountain, which was so old he seemed the father of all things. The rivers which watered the farms and filled the fishermen's nets and turned the mill wheels all began there. The people built their houses with the wood from the trees that grow all around his feet. Even the sun seemed to rise from behind him. The mountain had been old even at the first Christmas time. So, on the high slopes, where his beautiful shoulders were, nothing changed, and the winter sun shone through the quiet birch trees. Sometimes at night a stone moved a little down the slope, but so slowly you couldn't hear it. That Christmas in those high places, everything was quiet, as always. Everything was quiet, that is, except a small mountain wind. "Mountain," said the wind, "I've been thinking. In the kingdom it's Christmas. People are giving presents, going to see each other. I should like to visit too." And to make his point, he swept the snow off a huge rock until it was bare. Now the mountain had his head so high it was in the clouds. Also, he had a tendency to speak too much. This means he was a philosopher. And he said, "Wind, do you not know that distance is the heart of beauty?" And the wind said he didn't know that. He didn't even know what it meant. "Well," said the mountain, "people think you are beautiful because they hear you from a long way off. They watch you bending the trees far above them. No one has ever climbed to my peak, and that is why I am much admired. You are a wind of the mountain. Your place is here with me." "Stuff and nonsense," said the wind, and he rushed down the mountainside and raced across the fields until he came to a farm. But when the farmer's wife heard him coming, she bolted the door, fastened the latches on the window, and put up the shutters. "Unfriendly," he muttered, and charged off towards the town. There he blew right along the main street. "Here, I'm the wind of the mountain, come to visit." But the people turned their faces away, bowed their heads, put up their collars and hurried home. By now the wind was thoroughly fed up. He blew back to the mountain, stole the rain off the trees and broke a few twigs as he went. "Mountain," he grumbled when he got back, "I shall travel. I shall go to the north, where the snow comes from. They'll have plenty of Christmas spirit there." "Stay here," said the mountain, "for the north is not a place, it is only an horizon. There is the home of the great north wind. His name is Necessity. His eyes are ice blue, and he will make you afraid, for although he is not cruel, he can see into even the smallest places and blow storms into the faces of the worst people and the best." But the mountain wind did not listen. He blew for a day and a night and came to the north. And he saw the north wind's eyes looking straight through him. It is certain that he would have turned into a small cloud of cold crystals if he hadn't seen a cave and hidden there. After some time, he grew aware of a pair of large eyes staring out of the dark. It was a bear sitting up and gazing out of the cave into the distance. He was about to take his winter sleep. Already he was dreaming of spring. Fat lilies in the stream, a good firm salmon, he was feeling particularly tired because he'd just got back from a journey. He'd always wanted to see what was on the other side of the frozen lake, so he'd spent a week walking around it. When he got there, he'd found he still couldn't see what was on the other side because that was where he had just come from. So he had to walk all the way back again. So when the mountain wind announced he had come for a visit, the bear just yawned, turned over, and went to sleep. "The north is not friendly," said the wind when he'd got back to the mountain. "I've decided to spend Christmas in the east. The sun comes up there. They'll appreciate a visit." "The east is not a place," said the mountain. "It's only a road, and along the road blows the east wind. She's called Time, and although she's old, her strength is green and young. If you dance with her, she'll tire you out, because her feet are hours and years." But the mountain wind had already gone. Having blown for a day and a night, he saw the road to the east, and along the road he felt the running feet of the east wind. He would have been caught up and still dancing there now, but he hid in a fire a travelling cobbler had lit at the side of the road. The cobbler was just sitting there, staring along the road. As it was Christmas time, he thought, people would be making visits, and if they were making visits, They would be wearing out more shoe leather. Moreover, he was shortly to become very famous. Distant people, not knowing he was a simple cobbler, who was slightly mad, would think he was a hero. In his dream the night before, a giant had threatened to eat him alive. So he had challenged the giant to a cobbling contest. Now the giant's boots were a mile long. So by the time the giant had unravelled the thread to make just one stitch and come back again, the cobbler had sewn up 12 pairs of shoes. So he was expecting quite a lot of business, one way or another. And when the mountain wind blew his sticks red hot in the fire and said he'd come to visit, the cobbler didn't hear him at all. Not even worth a visit, he grumbled to the mountain when he'd returned. I'll blow south. That's where the songbirds have gone for Christmas. I'll get a welcome there. The south, said the mountain, is not a place. It is a palace. In and out of its high walls and gardens blow the wind of the south. They call her pleasure, and the perfume that she blows from the roses in the wall will make you happy and sad at the same time. But his mind was made up. After a day and a night, he arrived in the south. Immediately he tasted the south wind as she went past, and it reminded the mountain wind of stories he had heard about the way humankind lived. He was in two minds, whether to laugh or cry, when he saw a woman standing at the gate, and he hid for a moment in the folds of her rich clothes. She was the daughter of the emperor. Her hair was all powdered with gold, and her silk dress brushed the top of the grass. That same day, she had been married. In the afternoon, after the wedding, her new husband had taken her down to the river. "Let me show you the most beautiful thing in the river," he had said. He had rowed her to a spot where the water was deepest. "There," he pointed. "Look down there." She peered over the side of the boat, and there it was, her reflection. Then a messenger had come to say it was time for him to leave. He was an officer in the Emperor's Guard and needed in the Emperor's wars. She was thinking she would spend Christmas without him, and every mile further away he rode, she thought she loved him more. So when the mountain wind dried her sleeves for her and announced himself, he got no answer. "Yes, I know what you're going to say," said the mountain when the wind had blown back again. "The south is full of strangers, and you want to travel west," interrupted the mountain wind, "where the sun sleeps. I know they'll be hospitable there." "But the West," said the mountain, "is not a place. It's only a shore, and beyond it there lies the sea, which perhaps goes on forever. The west wind blows there, and his real name is magic. He has 1,000 voices, and if you'll listen, his song will capture you and lead you out to sea." But the mountain wind paid no attention. He blew towards the west for a day and a night, and when he came to the shore of the great sea, he heard the west wind singing. "La, la, 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 la." And he very nearly lost himself in the dark amongst the waves and the rocks on the shore, had he not spotted a small house at the foot of the cliff. "I shall hide there," he thought. When he came nearer, he could see a light inside, and was surprised how easy it was to enter. Unlike the houses in town, its window latch was broken. There were no shutters, and there was a big gap under the door. In fact, it was not the gap that was big, but the mountain wind that was small, for by now, with all his travelling, he had lost most of his strength and was more of a mountain breeze. Inside the fisherman's hut, a boy was sitting in front of the fire with his father. By now, it was Christmas Eve, and the fisherman had given his son a pipe to play. He'd spent weeks carving it and cutting holes for the fingers. After supper, he'd promised he would teach him how to play it. Now the mountain wind had seen on the floor an old stick full of holes and decided to hide there. And when the child put the pipe to his mouth, the wind thought it was a suitable time to greet them. "I've come from the mountain to visit you all." But his words, coming from inside the pipe, sounded like strange music. The fisherman laughed and said that his son didn't need any lessons, and the mountain wind was so pleased with his reception that he decided to stay on. In any case, he was such a small mountain wind by now that it was too far to go back to the mountain, and he did like the boy. So now, in the middle of the kingdom, it is even quieter than before. And by the shore in the west, people came to hear the boy play. And the people say it sounds like something far away. And the boy says it's a mountain wind that lives in his pipe. And the people laugh. And the boy laughs too, for he knows something that they do not.